Even though Yellowstone has come to an end, I feel like its franchise is just getting started, and what's coming next has me especially excited because one of the most emotionally grounded and morally complex characters is stepping into his own spotlight. Yep, I'm talking about none other than Casey Dutton. Luke Grimes is officially coming back to play him in a brand new spin-off series called Marshals. Plus, filming has already started, so let's talk about it. There's something poetic about watching a man walk away from everything he's ever known, only to find his purpose in a place he never imagined. That's exactly what episode 1 of Marshals is about to explore. Casey Dutton, the son who once stood in the shadow of John Dutton's empire, is stepping into his own myth now. And he's doing it far from the land of cattle brands and family feuds. After the emotional conclusion of Yellowstone, where Casey made the soul-shaking decision to sell the ranch to the Broken Rock tribe, the weight of that sacrifice still lingers. That land wasn't just soil, it was blood, history, war, and identity. So for Casey to let it go? It wasn't a retreat. It was a declaration. And Marshals picks up that emotional thread and runs with it. From the very beginning, we're pulled into a gritty, unforgiving world that feels both familiar and entirely new. The wide landscapes are still there, yes, but they're no longer places of peace or reflection. These lands are now battlegrounds for justice. In episode 1, Casey isn't just trying to start over. He's been recruited, drawn into a special task force of U.S. Marshals, men and women who operate beyond the limits of local law. Their job? Deliver justice where the law no longer reaches. It's the kind of mission tailor-made for a man like Casey, someone who carries loss like armor and purpose like a weapon. And yet, even as he steps into this new role, the ghosts of his past are never far behind. You can almost feel it in the air. This isn't going to be a clean slate. It's going to be a reckoning. The most surprising part? Taylor Sheridan isn't the one at the helm this time. That's right, Marshals is the first major project in the Yellowstone universe. Not written by him. Instead, Spencer Hudnut, the mind behind SEAL Team, is taking over the narrative. It's a risky move, but one that might actually make sense. Casey's past as a Navy SEAL was never fully explored in Yellowstone, and Hudnut has spent years telling stories about warriors haunted by their service. In other words, he understands Casey's pain. He understands the silence behind his eyes, the violence behind his calm, and the impossible line he walks between justice and mercy. That's why this isn't just another Western, it's something deeper. Something psychological. And that's what makes episode 1 such a game changer. But let's be honest, no one becomes a marshal without paying a price. And in the world of Marshals, justice doesn't come with a badge. It comes with scars. We already know Casey isn't the type to follow orders blindly. So when he's faced with his first mission, one that tests not just his skills but his beliefs, it's going to cut deep. This isn't the Yellowstone ranch where the enemy was always in sight. Now, the danger wears many faces. And the biggest threat may not be who Casey is chasing, but who he becomes in the process. The trailer for episode 1 hints at everything we've been waiting for: high-stakes confrontations, moral dilemmas, emotional flashbacks, and a new group of allies who may or may not be trustworthy. And at the center of it all is Luke Grimes, stepping fully into the spotlight. For years, Casey was the quiet heart of the Dutton family. Now, he's the voice, the leader, the weapon. But with great power comes even greater conflict. And if this first episode is any indication, Marshals is going to put Casey through hell, because only through fire can legends be forged. Marshals dives deeper into Casey Dutton's journey. Episode 2 begins to show us the toll this new life is already taking. This isn't the life he imagined for himself, not even close. Gone are the days of riding across his family's land with his son or trying to make peace between his father's legacy and his own need for freedom. Now, Casey is surrounded by strangers, bound by a badge, and forced to make decisions that blur the line between justice and vengeance. Episode 2 starts to reveal that being a U.S. Marshal in this new world isn't just about catching outlaws, it's about confronting the ghosts you thought you'd buried. And Casey? He's got more ghosts than most. The episode opens with Casey being called into his first high-priority mission, a land dispute turned violent just outside the Montana border. It's supposed to be a simple operation. A group of armed men has taken control of a ranch, claiming the government has no right to intervene. But nothing is ever simple in this world. By the time Casey and his new team arrive, the situation has escalated. There's blood on the ground. A sheriff has already been injured. And the leader of the group isn't just some unhinged militiaman, he's a former soldier Casey once served with overseas. Suddenly, this isn't about law enforcement anymore. It's personal. And as Casey stands face to face with someone who knows his past, we start to see a version of him we haven't seen in years, a version shaped by war, betrayal, and the unbearable weight of memory. That's what makes Marshals so gripping. It doesn't give us clean answers or easy victories. It forces Casey, and us, to question everything. The man standing on the other side of that standoff used to be a brother in arms. Now, he's pointing a gun at civilians, convinced he's protecting the land from government overreach. And deep down, a part of Casey understands him. After all, Casey once watched powerful men rip land from his family. He knows how it feels to be betrayed by the system. So, the question becomes, where does understanding end and accountability begin? In this moment, we see Casey at a crossroads. One wrong word could lead to a shootout, but one act of mercy could cost him his badge. It's a brutal reminder that justice isn't just about law, it's about choice. And every choice leaves a scar. Meanwhile, back in his small cabin outside the reservation, we get our first glimpse of Monica and Tate. Yes, they're still here, but things are far from okay. Monica is worried. She watches the news reports and sees the violence growing. And she knows that Casey's mission isn't just dangerous, it's soul-destroying. Tate, now older and more aware, begins to ask harder questions about why his father left the ranch, why they don't visit his grandfather's grave, and why Casey comes home looking more broken each time. There's a heartbreaking scene where Casey tries to explain to Tate what it means to protect people who can't protect themselves, but the words fall flat. Because how do you explain to a child that you're choosing strangers over your own family? That's the cost Casey is paying. And Monica sees it too. She begs him to walk away. To find peace. But Casey can't. Not yet. Not while there's still injustice out there that reminds him of what his own family went through. That duality, protector and destroyer, is what defines episode 2. And the show doesn't shy away from the emotional mess it creates. Every time Casey puts on that Marshals badge, he's not just serving justice, he's running from something. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's grief. Maybe it's the fear that if he stops moving, he'll be forced to feel everything he's buried since his brother died, since his father turned cold, since the land he loved was handed over to strangers. The writing in this episode is sharp, slow-burning, and relentless. There's no flashy hero moment. Just a man doing the best he can with the pieces life left him. What also stands out in this episode is the team around Casey. We meet 2 of the other Marshals, Ramirez, a no-nonsense agent with a painful past of her own, and Mac, a younger, impulsive rookie who idolizes Casey without really knowing what he's been through. Ramirez challenges Casey constantly, questioning his calls, doubting his decisions, and forcing him to explain himself. It's not because she doesn't respect him, it's because she sees the danger in how much Casey holds back. And Mac? He reminds Casey of himself when he first came back from war, hopeful, angry, and desperate to prove something. There's a quiet moment when Mac asks Casey, "Do you ever stop seeing it?" referring to the battlefield, and Casey just looks away. No answer. Because that silence says everything. The episode ends on a powerful cliffhanger. After finally defusing the standoff and arresting the rogue ex-soldier without bloodshed, Casey turns in the evidence report, only to discover that higher authorities have already buried the case. Apparently, the land was part of a federal acquisition plan, and the militia's warnings were ignored for months. In other words, they were right about being manipulated. Casey did everything by the book, and it didn't matter. Justice wasn't served. It was covered up. And as Casey walks away from the courthouse, there's a look on his face that tells us this job, this mission, it's changing him. And not in a good way. By the time episode 3 begins, why Marshals has made one thing heartbreakingly clear: this isn't just a story about law and order. It's about a man who can't escape his past, no matter how far he runs. Casey Dutton might wear a badge now, might work for the federal government, might chase down fugitives across state lines, but none of that has erased the pain he carries. Or the unresolved wounds he thought he could bury under duty. And in this episode, those wounds are ripped wide open. It all begins with a call Casey wasn't expecting. A woman has gone missing on the edge of the reservation, an activist who's been working with tribal leaders to protect sacred land from government seizure. The Marshals are called in under the pretense that this could be tied to a violent extremist group. But the moment Casey sees the case file, he knows something's off. The missing woman's name? Naomi Rainwater. A distant cousin of Chief Thomas Rainwater. And Casey doesn't need a map to know where this leads. This isn't just a kidnapping. It's a message. Someone is stirring up old tensions between the federal government and the Broken Rock tribe. Someone wants a war. And Casey, whether he likes it or not, is now standing in the middle of it. The tension in episode 3 is like a slow-burning fuse. Casey is torn between 2 loyalties, the badge he wears now and the blood ties he's never truly left behind. He goes to see Chief Rainwater. And what should be a reunion between 2 men who once made peace feels cold, broken. Rainwater looks at him like a stranger, and Casey knows why. "You used to ride for your people," Rainwater says. "Now you ride for the ones who push us off the map." That line cuts deep. Because even if Casey made that deal in good faith, selling the Yellowstone ranch for $1 to preserve it forever, his new role as a marshal puts him on the opposite side of the fight. And for Rainwater, that's a betrayal too big to ignore, but Casey isn't the only one haunted by his past. Episode 3 also spends time showing us Monica's growing unease. She's always been the heart of their family, the one who tried to bring balance between two worlds, the Dutton legacy and her native roots. But now she feels that balance breaking. She sees Casey walking into danger every day. She hears whispers from the reservation about land being taken, people going missing, and corruption leaking into their borders. And worst of all, she feels Tate pulling away. Their son, once quiet and innocent, is now angry. He sees how his father's badge makes others flinch. He hears how people talk behind Casey's back, calling him a traitor, a sellout, a Dutton pretending to be a protector. Monica tries to hold the family together, but there's a storm coming. And no one is more aware of it than her. One of the most powerful scenes in the episode comes when Casey tracks down a lead in the Naomi Rainwater case. It takes him deep into the forests on the outskirts of the reservation, land so sacred it's barely touched by roads. There, he meets an old man who doesn't say much but offers Casey a warning: the land remembers what men forget. It's a haunting phrase, and Casey can't shake it. Because he knows what he's forgotten. Or at least, what he's tried to forget. His brother Lee's death. His father's coldness. His role in covering up the violence that once defined their land. Every tree, every river, every mountain in this place holds memories. And those memories are watching him. Eventually, Casey finds Naomi. She's alive, but barely. Hidden away in an old hunting cabin, held hostage by mercenaries hired by a shadowy real estate firm tied to out-of-state developers. Their goal was never to kill her. It was to silence her, scare the tribe, and move forward with their land grabs without resistance. Casey fights to get her out, and the action here is brutal, messy, and real. He doesn't come out clean. He's stabbed, shot at, nearly killed. But he saves her. And when he carries her out of the forest, bloodied and half-conscious, it feels like a baptism. A return to something purer, something righteous. This is what justice looks like to Casey. Not courtroom deals. Not paperwork. Just a man doing what needs to be done. But even as the episode closes with Casey bringing Naomi to safety, the victory feels hollow. Because the people behind her abduction? They're protected. Shielded by politics, corporate lawyers, and powerful friends in Washington. Casey's boss tells him to move on. We got the girl. That's enough. But it's not enough for Casey. Not anymore. Episode 3 ends with him standing alone at the edge of the reservation, watching the sun set over the land he gave away. His badge feels heavier now. The lines between right and wrong have blurred into gray. And for the first time since he became a marshal, he asks himself, is this really justice? Or just another game played by the powerful? This episode is a masterclass in emotional storytelling. It doesn't rely on spectacle, it relies on silence, on weight, on consequence. Every decision Casey makes echoes beyond himself. Every step forward pulls him deeper into a system that doesn't care about the people he's trying to protect. And that's what makes Why Marshals such a powerful evolution of the Yellowstone story. It's not about family dynasties anymore. It's about legacy in a different form, the kind that comes from standing up when no one else will. But how long can one man stand before the world breaks him? Episode 4 of Why Marshals doesn't just raise the stakes, it tears into Casey Dutton's soul. After everything he's endured, selling the family ranch, joining the U.S. Marshals, trying to serve justice without losing himself, this episode marks the moment where all of those decisions come back to haunt him. Because now, the enemy isn't just out there in the world, it's sitting next to him, wearing the same badge, pretending to fight the same fight. And once Casey realizes what's really going on, it might already be too late. The episode starts with a quiet funeral. A fellow marshal, Ramirez's old partner, is found dead under mysterious circumstances. Everyone is quick to label it a tragic accident, another casualty of a dangerous job. But something doesn't sit right with Casey. The details don't add up. The scene was too clean. The official story feels too convenient. And the deeper he digs, the more cracks begin to show. What he uncovers next is something no one in the marshal's office wants to admit: corruption, deeply rooted and cleverly hidden. A small group within the agency has been working off the books, protecting corporate land developers and suppressing tribal activists in exchange for money and influence. And one of the names tied to these backdoor deals? A senior marshal that Casey trusted. This revelation shakes Casey to the core. He joined the Marshals to be part of something honorable. To serve and protect in a way that his family legacy never let him. But now, he sees that even this badge comes with blood on it. And worse, by standing still, by staying quiet, he's become part of it. The betrayal is personal, and not just because of the men involved, but because of what it says about the world Casey has been trying so hard to believe in. He sacrificed everything to walk a straighter path. And now that path is leading him right back into the same darkness he tried to escape. Meanwhile, Monica senses the shift in Casey long before he says a word. He comes home later each night, his eyes heavier, his voice quieter. There's a coldness in him now that wasn't there before. And she's scared. She tells him plainly, "I'm losing you again. This job, it's changing you." But Casey doesn't know how to respond. Because she's right. He is changing. He doesn't dream like he used to. He doesn't look at the land with the same hope. Even Tate sees it. He asks his dad why he won't ride with him anymore, why he's always gone, why he looks sad even when he says he's fine. And Casey can't lie, not to them. Not to himself. "I thought I could fix things," he tells Monica. "But I don't even know what I'm fighting for anymore." What makes episode 4 so emotionally devastating is how isolated Casey becomes. Ramirez, his only real ally in the office, is warned to stay away from him. The others start treating him like a problem. Like someone asking too many questions. It's the same feeling Casey had back on the ranch in Yellowstone's later seasons, the sense that no matter what side he chooses, someone always wants him gone. But this time, the stakes are different. If he pushes too hard, if he calls out the wrong person, people could die. Monica, Tate, even Ramirez. And Casey knows it. He starts investigating in secret, collecting files, building a case, but he's not trained in this kind of war. This isn't about cattle rustlers or bar fights. It's about politics, money, and silence bought with fear. And the scariest part? The corruption isn't just inside the Marshals' office. It extends to local police, regional courts, and even state lawmakers. Everyone has something to gain by keeping the truth buried. And Casey? He's just one man with a badge and a haunted past. A key scene in this episode shows Casey visiting the remains of the Yellowstone ranch. The house is gone. The barns, the fences, everything that once stood for power and pride has been torn down. Only a single cross remains, where he buried his brother Lee. He kneels there, broken, whispering, "I thought this would be enough. I thought letting go would mean peace." But the land is silent. It doesn't forgive, and it doesn't forget. And neither does Casey. The episode's final 15 minutes are some of the most intense in the series so far. After tracking one of the corrupt marshals to a meeting with a land developer, Casey confronts him, alone, off the record. What starts as a tense conversation quickly escalates into a fight. It's brutal, raw, and messy. But Casey wins. He forces the man to confess, and records the entire thing. It's enough evidence to go public. To expose the rot inside the system. But there's a cost. The marshal warns him, "You think you're a hero? You don't know who you're dealing with. They'll come for your family first." And suddenly, Casey's entire world snaps into focus. Everything he loves is in danger. Monica, Tate, Ramirez. And for the first time, he realizes this war isn't something he can fight with a gun or a badge. It's something bigger. Something older. The same evil his family fought for generations is still alive, it's just wearing a new face. The episode ends with Casey standing on the porch of his cabin, watching the lights in the distance. He knows they're coming. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. But soon. And this time, he won't wait to be hunted. He's going to fight back. Not just as a marshal. Not just as a Dutton. But as a man who's finally decided that enough is enough. Episode 4 is the breaking point. The moment where Casey stops running from the past and starts confronting the future head-on. And while he may be alone, his purpose has never been clearer. The battle ahead will be brutal. But for the first time in a long time, Casey Dutton is ready. By episode 5 of Why Marshals, the emotional pressure that's been building from the very beginning finally explodes. This is where the story stops whispering and starts screaming. Everything Casey Dutton has tried to hold together, his family, his career, his sanity, is now on the verge of collapse. But here's the thing about Casey: when the world corners him, he doesn't beg. He doesn't bargain. He fights. And in this episode, we finally see the fire inside him burn without apology. The reckoning has begun, and Casey is no longer playing by anyone else's rules. The episode opens with silence, thick, unbearable silence. Monica and Tate are gone. Sent away under the protection of the Broken Rock tribe after Casey received a veiled threat through an untraceable phone call. The words were simple: tell the marshal he can't save everyone. But the message was clear. Expose the truth, and his family dies. That moment shatters Casey in a way we've never seen before. All this time, he thought justice was about balance. About choosing the harder right instead of the easier wrong. But now he sees the full picture. Justice, in this broken world, is not only dangerous, it's personal. And so, with his wife and son hidden away, Casey prepares for war, but this war isn't one fought with fists or firearms, it's a war of information, leverage, and exposure. And Casey knows he doesn't have the tools to fight it alone. In a move that shocks his fellow marshals, he takes an unofficial leave of absence, handing over his badge and stepping outside the system he once believed in. His superiors call it insubordination. The men working against him call it weakness. But Casey doesn't care. He's done being a pawn. It's time to go rogue and take down the network of corruption from the outside. One of the most riveting parts of this episode is how Casey begins building his plan. He tracks down an old contact from his Navy SEAL days, a reclusive cybersurveillance expert who owes Casey a favor. Together, they begin pulling files, mapping connections, and uncovering a decades-long scheme that stretches from local officials all the way to Washington, D.C. What they find is devastating. Developers aren't just taking land, they're laundering money through shell companies, bribing law enforcement, and falsifying legal documents to push indigenous families off their properties. And all of this is happening under the watch of marshals sworn to protect the public. Casey has the names, the bank accounts, the proof. But that's not enough. He needs the story to go public. And fast. Here's where Monica's role takes on new meaning. From her hiding place, she reaches out to an old college friend, an investigative journalist with ties to a major media outlet. Together, they start preparing a feature exposé. The scenes between Monica and the journalist are deeply emotional. She speaks not as a victim, but as a survivor. A woman who watched her husband choose justice over safety, and a mother who refuses to let her son grow up in a world where the truth is buried for profit. We've lost land, Monica says in a trembling voice, but we will not lose our voices. Meanwhile, Ramirez, the only ally left inside the Marshals, decides to risk everything. Despite being warned to stay away from Casey, she sneaks out files, internal memos, and video evidence that further confirm the conspiracy. It's a dangerous move, and it puts a target on her back. But she believes in Casey. She believes in the man he used to be, and the one he's fighting to become again. Their alliance becomes the emotional spine of the episode, two broken officers trying to fix a system that doesn't want to be saved. As the plan nears execution, the tension skyrockets. Casey arranges to meet the journalist in secret, using a remote cabin in the mountains once used by his father, John Dutton, as a meeting spot during Yellowstone's most violent days. The location itself feels symbolic, one generation's battle now echoing into the next. But as he waits, something goes wrong. The journalist never arrives. Instead, a black SUV pulls up. Men step out, clean suits, no badges, no names. They're not here to talk. They're here to erase. What follows is the most intense scene in the series so far. A full-blown ambush in the snow-covered wilderness, where Casey is outnumbered, outgunned, and bleeding by the end of it. But he doesn't go down. He fights with every ounce of instinct and pain he's carried for years. And when the smoke clears, the men are gone, and Casey is alive. Barely. But alive. He stumbles into the cabin and sends one last encrypted message to Monica and the journalist. Release everything. Don't wait. And with that, the truth is set free. The final 10 minutes of episode 5 unfold like wildfire. News outlets explode with the story. Names are named. Faces are shown. Protests erupt. Government hearings are announced. And across Montana, the land begins to breathe again. It's not over, not by a long shot, but it's a start. A powerful, painful, hopeful start. The episode ends with Casey waking up in a hospital bed, bandaged and silent. Ramirez sits beside him. Monica and Tate walk in, tears in their eyes. And Casey? He just whispers one word, home. Why Marshals Episode 5 is not just the turning point of the series, it's a gut-wrenching, soul-redefining moment for Casey Dutton. The man who spent years trying to escape the Dutton name has now become its truest heir, not by defending a ranch, but by defending the truth. And as the dust settles, one thing is clear, the war isn't over. But for the first time, Casey Dutton is leading the charge, not as a Dutton, not as a marshal, but as a man who finally knows what he stands for.